YouTube, what's going on? I'm Rocket, and welcome to part 1 of my Monteverde HackTheBox walkthrough series. In this video, I cover some basic enumeration of the host, where we find an LDAP service. We then query the LDAP service to enumerate all Active Directory accounts, which we can then use in a password spring attack. The password spring attack succeeds where we end up compromising an account, which is then used to enumerate all SMB shares. After enumerating those SMB shares, we find some user credentials, which we then use to log into the host via Windows remoting to ultimately get the first user flag. So without further ado, let's get right to it. To start out, I like to run nmap scan. So I'll just go sudo nmap -b- to enumerate all TCP ports, -oa to output all formats, and we'll call it nmap TCP monteverde.htb. I've already ran this command, so let's take a look at the results right here. We do see that there is DNS open here, followed by Kerberos, Subnet BIOS, LDAP, and SMB. All these services here indicate that this is potentially a Windows host. So let's take all these ports, edit them, and we're just going to format this so that every port is delimited by a comma. So I'm just going to write a vim macro here, so qd, and then I'm just going to record some keyboard movements, and then repeat that macro 100 times, and then we're going to search and replace all new lines with a comma. Perfect. We'll copy all these and then run another nmap scan. So we'll say sudo nmap -p, paste the port, -sc to run default scripts, -sv to enumerate service versions, -oa again to output all formats, and we'll call it nmap TCP full version monteverde.htb. I've also already ran this, so let's check out the results below. So here it looks like we do have Active Directory. We do see that the Active Directory domain is potentially megabank.local0. So that's definitely something to look for. And we also have SMB. Alright, so let's go enumerate those. So I'm going to make a directory called ldap. Go into it. And now we're going to enumerate. We're going to dump everything. So we'll just say ldapsearch -x to perform basic authentication, and -h to specify the host, so monteverde.htb, and we'll specify the -b flag, which tells us our base entry point. So in this case, the base entry point was megabank.local, but instead of saying megabank.local, we have to say dc equals megabank, comma dc equals local. That's just how Active Directory works. And we can dump all these results to a file. So I'll just call this all ldap.out. So let's take a look at the results. And we do see that there is a lot of information right here. So one of the first things I like to do is just kind of find the users here. So if we just search for user, we can start enumerating for all megabank.users. So a cool way to do this is LDAP filters, where we can just query for a SAM account type. So if I go to the very bottom right here, the SAM account type does have a special number, so we'll just use that, and we'll just run the same command, but at the end we'll specify our LDAP filter. So we'll say SAM account type matches these flags right here. And instead of calling this all ldap.out, we'll just call this something like AD users, which basically stands for Active Directory users. Let's take a look at the results. And from here we do get some users, which we should then grep for. So you can just run I think it was, let's check here again. We want the SAM account names. That's all we care about. So we'll grep for SAM account name. So grep SAM account name AD users.out, and we do want to format it so we only get the second column here. And we can do that by using the cut command. So -d. So d is the delimiter, which will be a space in this case, and then we'll say F2 to get the second column. And this is our list of users. So I'm going to make a list because it might be handy later. So I'll just call this AD users -word list.out. All right, the second thing I like to do when enumerating LDAP is look for passwords in comments and the description. So to do that, we can just run the same LDAP query. Instead of saying same account type, we can say something like where description is anything like password, or comments is anything like password. I'm not going to dump this anywhere because I just want to see the results. So we do see some results here. So 80 sync password set. Remember, this group cannot have their passwords replicated. That's not too interesting for now. Nope, we don't see any credentials right there. So let's try saying something like secret. And maybe here we'll also say secret. And we get no results. Maybe let's try cred. Nothing to do with credentials. And last but not least, private. And we get nothing there. Okay, so at this point, we can say that we didn't find any exposed credentials via LDAP, but let's see if we can enumerate any SMB shares now that we've exhausted LDAP. So for this, I like to make a directory called SMB, go into it, and then I like to run SMB client, specify the -l flag to list shares, and we'll run it on Monteverde.htb using an SMB null session, so no credentials required. And we get anonymous login successful, but no shares. So that failed. The next thing I like to do is run RPC client to query net BIOS. So I'll say RPC client -u. We won't provide any user because we're also using a null session here on Monteverde.htb. We don't put any password either, and it looks like we do have a session. From here, we can also enumerate all the LDAP users by saying enum dom users. And at this point, because we couldn't find any credentials, a simple thing to do is just to try a password spraying attack. So when you perform a password spraying attack, you have to be careful not to lock out any accounts because there are password policies in Active Directory. And if you're doing a real engagement, you definitely don't want to end up locking any of your clients out while they're doing their work throughout the day. So right here, we're going to check the password policy for one of these users, and we're going to find out whether a password spraying attack is going to be a viable option for us. So I think there's a command here called enum pwinfo. It's like pwinfo. Yeah, so we can get user dom pwinfo to retrieve user domain password info. So we'll say get user dom pwinfo, and let's just try something like mhope. This seems like someone's account. And oh, you do have to specify the RID value for this to work. And it looks like there is no lockout policy here, so we can use a password spraying attack. The first thing I like to do in a password spraying attack is just log in with every account. Let's say guest, AAD, and then this guy right here, we'll say mhope, SA batch jobs, SVC, ATA, and so on. So because we already compiled a word list from earlier, we can use that. So I'm just going to make an exploit directory, move the LDAP. What was it called? It's called 80 users word list.out. And I'm going to move that to the exploit directory. From here, we're going to perform our password spraying attack to log in via SMB using Metasploit to help automate this. So we'll just say sudo msf console. From here we can search SMB. I think it's called SMB login. Yeah, so we'll take this, use it, and we're going to need to configure this properly. So we'll set our user file to be, I think it was like 80 users word list out, and then we're just going to say user as passed true. This configuration option here log in with every user account and use that as the password. Simple enough. Set our hosts to monteverde.htb. Let's see what we got set so far. And it looks good. So let's just go run. So it looks like we have a hit right here. Using these credentials, we should be able to further enumerate SMB. So I'm just gonna quit Metasploit right here, go back to the SMB share, and make a directory called SA batch jobs. Let's go into it, and then we're gonna run SMB map, providing SA batch jobs as a user and password on host monteverde.htb. We're also going to pass the -r flag so we can recursively enumerate it. And we get some results. So let's take a look. The first thing is IPC. In IPC, you generally don't find files, you just have named pipes, which are basically just file descriptors. So we wouldn't get any use out of downloading anything from there. The next share to look at is the sysvol share, which can contain Active Directory policies, scripts, and other goodies that we might want to look for. So let's start looking at the sysvol share. So I'm going to make a directory called sysvol, go into it, and then I'm going to run SMB client to download all the contents. And the reason why I'm using SMB client to do this is because that tool preserves the directory structure, unlike SMB map, which is handy later if you want to stay organized and recursively search all the contents locally on your machine. So we'll say SMB client -u, provide the user, delimited by a %, followed by the password, and then we'll just say monteverde.htb. The share is sysvol. So here, we want to set recurse on, and prompt off. And then we'll say mget star. This series of commands will let you recursively download all contents. Recurse on, obviously recurse. Prompt off, so you don't get prompted every time you try to download a file to say, hey, do you want to download this? Yes or no. And mget star to just get everything. Cool. So we got that. The next thing we want to get is this file right here, which is in the users share. So let's make a users share. Go into the users share and run SMB client again. I'm say sysvol, we'll say users. If you're curious how I auto-completed that, you can just hit Control R and then type something, and that will recursively bring you back into your command line history. So again, we're gonna do the same thing. Recurse on, prompt off, mget star. So we got the file. All right, so to me, anything that is user related is first priority. So let's take a look at that first. So let's take a look at azure.xml in the mhope directory. And it's a binary file. So this isn't really readable. So, however, it does look like there's an ASCII character after every 2 bytes. So let's take a look at that in a hex dump. So let's run xxd azure.xml, go up a bit. And if we look carefully, it looks like every byte is 2 bytes wide. So 3C00, 4F00. What this indicates is this is Unicode, which reads 2 bytes wide because there might be space for special characters here if you had like Chinese characters, for example. But in order to read this in our Unix terminal, we need to convert it to ASCII. So we just read it as like 3C, 4F, 62, 6A. You get the point. So there's a tool here called iconv. You can take a look at it with the man iconv command. And essentially it just converts text from one character encoding to another. So in this case, we're going to specify the -f flag to convert from Unicode -t to ASCII. Simple enough. So yeah, iconv -f Unicode -t ASCII, and we'll take azure.xml. And that worked perfectly. This looks perfectly readable in our terminal. First thing that pops out is the password. So we'll take this, and it looks like this file was in mhope's directory, so it is probably his password. So let's take it and let's re-enumerate the SMB shares as mhope, see if that works. So here I'm going to make another directory called mhope, go into it. and run SMB map again. So the user is mhope. We'll provide his password and recursively enumerate all shares on Monteverde.htb. So looking at the output right here, the output here looks very similar to the output that we got as a previous user. So at this point, I'm not going to bother doing the same steps and downloading everything again. Instead, I'm going to look at more context of this user because mhope might potentially be capable of doing more than just the SA batch job user. So let's go back to LDAP and maybe look up adusers.out, search for mhope, and maybe we'll get more context on what this user is capable of doing. So we know where his home directory is, but that's where we got his credentials from, the Azure XML file. He is a part of the Azure admins, and he is also a remote management user. So whenever you see a user that's part of the remote management users group, you can use that to log in via Windows remoting to get command line access on the host. So let's see if the Windows remoting port is exposed and if we can actually abuse that. So let's go back to our mmap scan. Let's get mmap, I think it was like full TCP full version.mmap, and the Windows remoting port is 5985. So we should be able to log in with these credentials. So I'll just go to my tools directory, use a tool called evilwinrm, and we'll just say evilwinrm-i to provide the host we want to connect to, or IP address. So in this case, Monteverde.htb. The user is mhope, and we'll provide his password. So establish connection to the remote endpoint. And we log in. So we can say, who am I? All. And it looks like we are a user here. So let's go to the desktop. And there's a flag. So that ends part 1 of this video, and I will see you in part 2.